3 days. That was how long it took for Marcus Sterling to decide his wife and their 4 newborn babies were bad for business. He stood in the sterile hospital room, looking down at his exhausted wife, Isabella, and tossed a manila envelope onto the bedsheet. "Sign it," he said cold, adjusting his Rolex. "I'm not spending my prime years changing diapers for a litter. I have a reputation to maintain." He walked out, leaving her penniless with Quadruplets screaming in the nursery. He thought he had cut off a dead weight. He had no idea that the woman he just discarded was the sole heiress to the Blackwood Empire, a fortune sitting quietly at $500 billion. And when she rose from the ashes, she wouldn't just survive. She would own the very ground he walked on. The silence in the private recovery room of St. Jude's Medical Center in Seattle was suffocating. Outside, the relentless Pacific Northwest rain hammered against the glass, blurring the city lights into streaks of grey and charcoal. Inside, the air smelled of antiseptic and the faint, lingering scent of expensive cologne. Santal 33, the signature scent of Marcus Sterling. Isabella Davis, her face pale and drawn from 36 hours of labor and an emergency C-section, stared at the envelope resting on her legs. The bold, black letters at the top of the document seemed to mock her physical agony. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Her hands, still trembling from the residual anesthesia and exhaustion, reached out to touch the paper. It felt heavy, like a tombstone. "He can't mean it," she whispered, her voice cracking. We just had them." The door creaked open, not for her husband to return and apologize, but for a nurse, a kind-faced woman named Sarah, who had been there through the terrifying delivery. "Mrs. Sterling. Isabella? Is everything all right? The babies are in the NICU, they're stable, but I thought your husband was coming back to see them." Isabella looked up, tears finally spilling over. "He's not coming back, Sarah. He's gone." Just an hour ago, Marcus had stood exactly where Sarah was standing. He hadn't looked at the photos of the 4 tiny infants, 3 boys and 1 girl, all born premature, but fighting hard. He had looked at his phone, checking stock prices for Sterling Dynamics, his mid-sized tech consultancy firm. 4, Isabella. 4, he had hissed, keeping his voice low so the hallway wouldn't hear. But the venom was clear. "We discussed 1, maybe 2. But quadruplets? Do you know what that looks like? It looks like a circus. It looks like poverty. I'm on the verge of closing the deal with the Henderson Group. I need to be seen as sleek, mobile, and focused, not a minivan driving dad buried in formula. They are your children, Marcus," she had pleaded from the bed. "We did IVF. We knew there was a chance of multiples. A chance of twins," he snapped. "Not a litter. Look at you. You're a mess. You'll be bedridden for months. The cost alone. No, I'm done. I'm opting out. You can't opt out of fatherhood. Watch me." That was the moment he threw the papers. He had them prepared weeks ago, she realized. He knew the moment the ultrasound confirmed 4 heartbeats that he was leaving. He had just waited until she was physically weakest to strike, ensuring she wouldn't have the energy to fight him for alimony. Now, alone in the room, Isabella felt a cold clarity wash over her. She picked up her phone. She had no family to call. Her mother had passed when she was 20, and she had never known her father. She had been an orphan in spirit long before she met Marcus. He was supposed to be her family. She dialed the only number she could think of. Marcus's mother, Evelyn. "Hello?" The voice was sharp, impatient. "Evelyn, it's Bella. Marcus he served me papers. In the hospital." There was a pause and then a sigh. Not of shock, but of annoyance. "Oh, honey, Don't be dramatic. Marcus called me. He told me the situation. Honestly, 4 babies? It's irresponsible, Bella. Marcus has a brilliant future. He can't be anchored down by that kind of domestic chaos. You should have terminated 2 of them when the doctor gave you the option. Isabella felt the blood drain from her face. They are your grandchildren. They are a liability, Evelyn said coldly. Sign the papers. He's offering you a $10,000 settlement. Take it and go. If you fight him, he has lawyers who will make sure you end up with nothing but legal fees. Goodbye, Bella. The line went dead. Isabella dropped the phone. The betrayal wasn't just marital, it was systemic. The entire Sterling clan saw her and her children not as human beings, but as bowed investments. She forced herself to sit up, wincing at the sharp pain in her abdomen. She slowly swung her legs over the side of the bed. She had to see them. She had to see the only 4 people in the world who didn't view her as a mistake. Pushing her IV pole, she shuffled down the hallway to the NICU. There, in 4 clear plastic incubators, lay her reality. Noah, Liam, Ethan, and little Sophia. They were so small, wired up to monitors, their chests rising and falling in a rhythm that was the only music she needed. I'm here, she whispered, pressing her hand against the glass of Noah's incubator. Daddy's not coming. It's just us. But I promise you, I will never, ever let you feel unwanted. But promises didn't buy diapers. Promises didn't pay rent. And as she looked at her reflection in the glass, hair matted, hospital gown hanging off her shoulder, eyes rimmed with red, she terrified herself. She had no job. She had quit her administrative assistant role at Marcus's request 6 months ago. She had no home. The lease was in Marcus's name. She was 26 years old, divorced, homeless, and responsible for 4 lives. 6 months later, the apartment complex was called Sunnyvale Arms, a cruel joke for a building situated in the shadow of a derelict factory in the gritty outskirts of Tacoma. The paint was peeling, the hallways smelled of boiled cabbage and damp carpet, and the elevator worked only on Tuesdays. Inside apartment 4B, controlled chaos reigned. Ethan, please, just take the bottle, Isabella pleaded, rocking the fussing baby while trying to use her foot to rock Sophia's bassinet. Liam was asleep in the playpen, and Noah was staring wide-eyed at the ceiling fan. Isabella looked 10 years older than she had in the hospital. Her blonde hair was tied in a messy bun that hadn't been redone in 2 days. She wore sweatpants stained with spit-up and a t-shirt that was 2 sizes too big. She had signed the papers. She had to. Marcus had made it clear. If she fought for more money, he would drag out the court case until she starved. He gave her $15,000, a slightly higher pity amount, and vanished. He sent a mandatory child support check of $800 a month, a pathetic sum for 4 children based on his official salary, which she knew he manipulated by hiding assets. She placed Ethan down and walked to the small kitchenette. On the counter lay a stack of final notice bills. Electricity, heat, internet. She opened the fridge. A carton of milk, half a loaf of bread, and a jar of generic peanut butter. I can't do this, she whispered, sliding down the fridge door to sit on the cold linoleum. I can't do this. Her phone buzzed on the counter. It was a notification from Instagram. Against her better judgment, she opened it. It was a post from a gossip page, Seattle Social. The headline read, Tech mogul Marcus Sterling engaged to heiress Tiffany Rourke. The photo showed Marcus, looking tan and fit in a tailored tuxedo, holding a champagne flute. Clinging to his arm was Tiffany, a 22-year-old Instagram model with veneers so white they practically glowed. They were on a yacht. The caption, New Beginnings, CEO of Sterling Dynamics, celebrates his engagement and a record-breaking quarter. "I've finally found a partner who matches my ambition," says Sterling. Isabella threw the phone across the room. It bounced off the sofa and landed on the rug. "Matches his ambition?" she scoffed, tears burning her eyes. "He means someone who doesn't have stretch marks and 4 crying babies." A sharp knock on the door made her jump. Panic flared. Was it the landlord? She was 3 weeks late on rent. Mr. Henderson was a patient man, but everyone had their limits. She wiped her face, smoothed her shirt, and opened the door a crack, keeping the chain on. Standing in the hallway was not the landlord. It was a man in an immaculate charcoal grey suit. He was older, perhaps in his 60s, with silver hair combed back perfectly, and wire-rimmed glasses that caught the dim hallway light. He held a leather briefcase that looked like it cost more than Isabella's entire apartment building. Behind him stood 2 large men in black suits, hands clasped in front of them. Bodyguards. "Miss Isabella Davis?" the man asked. His voice was deep, cultured, and oddly gentle. "Yes," Isabella said, her heart hammering. "If this is about the credit card debt, I told the agency I can pay $50 next week." "I am not a debt collector, Ms. Davis," the man said, a faint, sad smile touching his lips. "My name is Reginald Graves. I am the senior executor for the Blackwood estate." Isabella frowned. "Blackwood? I don't know any Blackwoods. You have the wrong apartment." "I do not," Reginald said firmly but kindly. "May I come in? It concerns your lineage, specifically your mother, Elena Davis." Isabella froze. Her mother had been a waitress who died of cancer, penniless and overworked. "My mother didn't have an estate. She barely had a savings account." "Your mother," Reginald said, lowering his voice, "was born Elena Blackwood. She ran away from home 30 years ago to escape a life she didn't want. She changed her name to Davis to hide. We have been looking for her, and you, for a very long time." Isabella's grip on the door loosened. "What?" "Please, Miss Davis. I have documents that will explain everything. And I have a message from your grandfather, Harrison Blackwood." She undid the chain and opened the door. Reginald stepped into the cramped, messy apartment. He didn't wrinkle his nose at the smell of diapers or the clutter. He looked around with a sense of solemn respect. He looked at the 4 babies sleeping and cooing in the living room. "Quadruplets," Reginald murmured. "Mr. Blackwood will be overwhelmed." "Who is Harrison Blackwood?" Isabella asked, crossing her arms defensively. Reginald set his briefcase on the wobbly coffee table and clicked the gold latches open. "Harrison Blackwood is the founder of Blackwood Global. He is the majority shareholder of the largest private banking consortium in the Western Hemisphere. He is a man worth approximately $500 billion. Isabella laughed. It was a dry, hysterical sound. "Okay, is this a prank? Did Marcus send you? Is this some sick joke to humiliate me?" Reginald pulled out a thick document, bound in blue velvet. He handed it to her. "This is not a joke, Miss Davis. Your grandfather passed away 4 days ago. He had no other living heirs. Your mother was his only child. You are his only grandchild." Reginald looked her dead in the eye. Everything he had, the properties in New York, London and Paris, the private islands, the fleet of jets, the technology patents, and the liquid assets, it has all been left to you. You are the sole beneficiary of the Blackwood fortune." Isabella stared at him. The room seemed to tilt. I can't pay my electric bill. I have $20 in my checking account." "That changes today," Reginald said. He pulled a checkbook from his jacket pocket. He uncapped a fountain pen and wrote quickly. He tore the check out and handed it to her. This is just a stipend for your immediate needs while we process the legal transfer. Consider it petty cash." Isabella looked at the check. Her knees gave out, and she collapsed onto the sofa. It was made out to Isabella Blackwood. The amount was $5,000. "Petty cash?" she choked out. "We need to get you and the children to safety," Reginald said, his tone shifting to one of professional urgency. "The paparazzi will find out about the transfer of power soon. We have a car waiting downstairs. A private jet is fueled at SeaTac to take you to the Blackwood estate in the Hamptons. Your life in this apartment is over." Isabella looked at the check, then at her babies. Then, a thought, dark and satisfying, crept into her mind. She thought of Marcus on his yacht. She thought of Evelyn calling her children a liability. She looked up at Reginald, a fire igniting in her tired eyes. Does Marcus Sterling know who Harrison Blackwood was? Reginald allowed himself a small, shark-like grin. Mr. Sterling's little consultancy firm has been trying to get a meeting with Blackwood Global for 5 years. He has been rejected 17 times. Isabella stood up. She wasn't just a tired mother anymore. She was a Blackwood. "Get the car," she said. "We're leaving." The transition from the squalor of Sunnyvale Arms to the sprawling, gated majesty of the Blackwood estate in the Hamptons was not just a change of scenery. It was a shift in reality. The private jet ride had been a blur of champagne, which she refused, and hot towels, which she accepted with tears in her eyes. When the motorcade of black SUVs pulled up the winding gravel driveway, Isabella stared out the tinted window. The estate wasn't a house. It was a fortress of limestone and ivy overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. It was a place built by old money, the kind that didn't shout, but whispered commands that shifted economies. "Welcome home, Miss Blackwood," Reginald said, opening the car door. For the first month, Isabella felt like an imposter. She would wake up in panic in her hand-carved mahogany bed, reaching for the bassinet, only to remember the babies were in the nursery down the hall, watched over by 3 highly qualified nannies who worked in shifts. She would rush there anyway, barefoot in silk pajamas, just to watch them breathe. But grief is a strange fuel. It can burn you down, or it can forge you into steel. One evening, Reginald found her in the library, staring at a portrait of her grandfather, Harrison Blackwood. He looked stern, a man who had never apologized for anything in his life. "He was ruthless, you know," Reginald said, placing a cup of herbal tea on the desk. "He loved your mother, but he was a king first and a father second. He regretted that in the end. That is why he left it all to you. He watched you from afar. He admired your resilience." "He watched me starve?" Isabella asked bitterly. "He watched you survive," Reginald corrected. "He wanted to see if you had the grit. Marcus Sterling broke you, Isabella, but Harrison wanted to see if you would rebuild." Isabella touched the cold frame of the portrait. "Marcus didn't just break me, Reginald. He threw me away like garbage. He looked at his own children and saw a line item he wanted to delete." "So," Reginald said, stepping closer, "what do you want to do about it?" "I want to hurt him," she said, her voice trembling, not with sadness but with rage. "I want to take everything he cares about, his reputation, his business, his ego." Reginald smiled. "Then you must stop being Isabella Davis, the victim. You must become Isabella Blackwood, the Titan. And for that, you have much to learn." Thus began the transformation. It was a grueling 6-month boot camp. Isabella didn't just get a makeover, though that happened too. The frizzy, neglected hair was treated and styled into sleek, honey-blonde waves that cascaded like liquid gold. The dark circles vanished under the care of the world's best dermatologists. Her wardrobe was purged of sweatpants and replaced with structured blazers from Armani, dresses from Dior, and heels that clicked on the marble floors like gunshots. But the real change happened in the boardroom. Reginald brought in tutors, retired CEOs, market analysts from Wall Street, and shark-like lawyers from Manhattan. From 8:00 a.m. to 6:00 p.m., Isabella studied. She learned how to read a balance sheet until her eyes crossed. She learned the art of the hostile takeover. She learned how to spot fear in a man's eyes across a negotiation table. She discovered she had a natural talent for it. Perhaps it was the mother in her, the instinct to protect, to organize, to manage chaos. Or perhaps it was the Blackwood blood finally waking up. By the time the quadruplets were crawling, Isabella was sitting at the head of the table at Blackwood Global Board meetings. The old men on the board, crusty billionaires who had expected a pushover heiress they could manipulate, were shocked. "We should sell the lithium mines in Nevada," one board member, a man named Mr. Calloway, suggested during a meeting. "The market is volatile." Isabella didn't look up from her tablet. "No, the EV market is projected to triple in the next 5 years. We hold. In fact, we buy the neighboring rights from the struggling competitors. Drive the price down, acquire them for pennies, then monopolize the supply chain." The room went silent. "That's aggressive," Calloway muttered. Isabella looked up, her eyes ice blue. "It's business, Mr. Calloway. If you don't have the stomach for it, I can accept your resignation by noon." She was ready. One evening, Reginald placed a tablet in front of her. "It's time." On the screen was a dossier, Sterling Dynamics. "Marcus has been struggling," Reginald explained. "Since the divorce, his image took a hit. Not because of you, nobody knows about you, but because he's reckless. He's been spending money he doesn't have on that yacht and his fiancée, Tiffany. He's leveraging his company to expand into AI tech, but he doesn't have the capital. He needs an investor," Isabella realized. "He needs a savior," Reginald corrected. "He is hosting a charity gala next week at the Pierre Hotel in New York. The Tech for Tomorrow ball. He's desperate to find a major backer. The entry ticket is $50,000. Isabella stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the ocean crashing against the rocks. "Buy a table," she said. "The center table, front row." "And your name?" "Put it under the corporation, Obsidian Holdings." Reginald raised an eyebrow. "He won't know it's you." "Exactly." Isabella smiled, and for the first time in 2 years, it was a smile that reached her eyes. It was dangerous. "He won't know until it's too late." The Pierre Hotel ballroom was a kaleidoscope of diamonds, tuxedos, and desperation masked as philanthropy. The air smelled of expensive perfume and even more expensive hors d'oeuvres. Marcus Sterling stood near the ice sculpture, swirling his scotch. He looked tired. The tan from his yacht trip had faded, replaced by the pallor of stress. Beside him, Tiffany was busy taking selfies, pouting her lips at her phone, completely disinterested in the fact that Marcus's company was hemorrhaging money. "Put the phone away, Tiffany," Marcus hissed. "Mr. Yamamoto is coming over. I need this deal." "Chill, babe," Tiffany snapped, popping gum. "I'm building my brand." Marcus clenched his jaw. He missed. No. He pushed the thought away. He didn't miss Isabella. He missed the quiet. He missed the way his life used to be organized and inexpensive. Now he was bleeding cash to keep Tiffany happy and paying alimony to... Well, he actually hadn't paid alimony in 3 months. He figured Isabella was too poor to sue him. "Marcus!" A booming voice interrupted his brooding. It was Brad Jenkins, a rival tech CEO. "Heard you're looking for capital? Rough quarter?" Strategic realignment, Marcus lied smoothly. We're poised for a breakout year. Right, Brad smirked. Hey, have you heard who bought the center table? The platinum table? Marcus looked at the empty table in the prime spot, right in front of the stage. It was set for one person. No. Who? Obsidian Holdings. Nobody knows who runs it. It's a ghost firm. But rumor is they have deep pockets. Blackwood money deep. Marcus perked up. If he could charm whoever sat at that table, he could save his company. He straightened his tie. I'll handle them. Suddenly, the room went quiet. The murmurs stopped. The clinking of glasses ceased. The double doors at the top of the grand staircase swung open. A woman stepped out. She was a vision of terrifying beauty. She wore a custom-made crimson gown that hugged her curves like a second skin, with a slit that ran up to her thigh, revealing a glimpse of toned, powerful leg. The fabric was silk, shimmering under the chandeliers. Around her neck sat a necklace that made the socialites in the room gasp. A cascade of black diamonds and rubies that looked heavy enough to anchor a ship. Her hair was a golden halo, and her makeup was flawless, highlighting cheekbones that could cut glass. She moved with a feline grace, descending the stairs not like a guest, but like the owner of the building. Flanking her were two massive bodyguards and an older, distinguished gentleman in a tuxedo. Reginald. Who is that? Tiffany asked, lowering her phone. Is she a movie star? Marcus stared. His mouth went dry. There was something familiar about the walk, the tilt of the head. But he couldn't place it. The woman he knew wore stained sweatpants and smelled of baby powder. This woman smelled of power and Baccarat Rouge 540. The woman reached the bottom of the stairs. The crowd parted for her like the Red Sea. She didn't look at anyone. She walked straight to the center table, the platinum table. Marcus watched as Reginald pulled out her chair. She sat, crossing her legs, and signaled for a waiter. I need to meet her, Marcus muttered. She looks like a bitch, Tiffany sniffed, clearly threatened. She looks like money, Marcus corrected. He downed his scotch and adjusted his jacket. Stay here. Marcus wove through the crowd, putting on his best billionaire charm smile. He approached the table. Good evening, he said, his voice smooth. I don't believe we've been introduced. I'm Marcus Sterling, CEO of Sterling Dynamics. I noticed you're sitting alone. It's a shame to let such beauty be solitary. The woman didn't look up immediately. She took a slow sip of her sparkling water. Then she set the glass down with a deliberate clink. She turned her head slowly and looked up at him. For a moment, Marcus felt the world stop. The eyes. He knew those eyes, but the context was so wrong, his brain refused to process it. Hello, Marcus, she said. Her voice was low, sultry, but edged with steel. Marcus blinked. I'm sorry, have we met? The woman let out a soft, dark laugh. She stood up. She was wearing heels that made her almost eye level with him. She leaned in close, so close he could smell the faint scent of vanilla, the same scent Isabella used to wear, but elevated, expensive. You don't recognize me? She whispered. Take a closer look. I'm the woman you left in a recovery room with 4 babies and a $10,000 check. Marcus stumbled back, as if he'd been punched. His face went white. Isabella, he choked out. No, that's impossible. Isabella she's in a slum in Tacoma. Isabella Davis is dead, she said coldly. She died the day you walked out. She extended a hand, displaying a ring on her finger, the Blackwood signet ring. I am Isabella Blackwood, sole heir to the Blackwood Empire, and as of this morning, the majority shareholder of the bank that holds your business loans. Marcus couldn't breathe. The room seemed to be spinning. Blackwood? You? But how? My mother, she said simply. You never asked about my family, Marcus. You were too busy talking about yourself. Turns out I was a princess in disguise. And you? She looked him up and down with withering pity. You're just the frog who missed his chance. Isabella, he stammered, panic setting in. Wait, let's not be hasty. If you have money, we can talk. The kids. How are the kids? I've missed them so much. Don't, she snapped, her voice raising just enough to draw the attention of the nearby tables. Do not speak about my children. You called them a litter. You called them a liability. I was stressed, Marcus pleaded, sweating now. I didn't mean it. Look, let's go somewhere private. Tiffany means nothing to me. We can fix this. We're a family. Isabella laughed again, loud and clear. It drew the eyes of the entire room. We are not family, Marcus. I am your creditor, and I'm here to collect. She turned to Reginald. I'm bored. Let's start the auction. She sat back down, turning her back on him. Marcus stood there, humiliated, as whispers broke out around the room. He felt a hand on his arm. It was Tiffany. Who is she? Tiffany asked. Why is she looking at you like you're dirt? Marcus stared at the back of his ex-wife's head. She's the owner of the bank, he whispered, horror dawning on him. And I think she's going to destroy me. The MC took the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the auction. Our first item is a rare vintage 1962 Ferrari GTO. Bidding starts at $20 million. Isabella raised her paddle immediately. 30 million. The room gasped. Marcus felt sick. That was more money than his entire company was worth, and she spent it like it was pocket change. But Isabella wasn't looking at the car. She was looking at the reflection in her glass, watching Marcus unravel. The game had just begun. The morning after the gala, Marcus Sterling woke up with a headache that felt like a drill pressing into his temples. He was in his penthouse, overlooking the Seattle skyline, but the view no longer looked like an empire. It looked like a ledge. His phone had been buzzing non-stop since 6:15 a.m. His creditors, his investors, the board of Sterling Dynamics, they had all heard the rumor. Obsidian Holdings, the shell company controlled by the vindictive ex-wife he had discarded, had just purchased the majority of his company's debt. She can't do this, Marcus muttered, pacing the living room in his silk robe. It's illegal. It's insider trading. It's something. Tiffany sat at the kitchen island, eating a grapefruit. She looked less concerned about his business and more concerned about the engagement ring on her finger. Maybe you should just apologize, babe. Send her flowers, the expensive ones, peonies. Marcus spun around, his eyes wild. Flowers? Tiffany, she has $500 billion. She doesn't want flowers. She wants my head on a spike. He grabbed his phone and dialed the number of Richard Vane, the nastiest, most expensive divorce attorney in the state. Vane was known as the Shark of Seattle. He didn't have ethics. He had billable hours. Richard, Marcus barked when the line connected. Change of plans. I want full custody. There was a pause on the line. Marcus, you signed away your rights 6 months ago. You literally checked the box that said minimal visitation. You called them a financial burden in a text message I had to suppress. I don't care, Marcus shouted. Circumstances have changed. The mother, she's unfit. She was living in a slum. She's mentally unstable. She kept my children from me. I want my kids back, Richard. All 4 of them. You want the children, Richard said dryly. Or do you want the leverage they provide over the Blackwood estate? Does it matter? Marcus hissed. If I have custody, I control the heirs. If I control the heirs, I get access to the trust funds for their upkeep. That's how we survive this. File the emergency motion, alleging, I don't know, kidnapping. She moved them across state lines without my consent. 2 days later, the peace of the Blackwood estate in the Hamptons was shattered by the arrival of a sleek black sedan, followed by a sheriff's vehicle. Isabella was in the garden, watching Noah and Liam try to crawl across the grass, while a nanny held Sophia. Ethan was asleep in Isabella's arms. The sun was warm, the ocean breeze was gentle, and for a moment, the war with Marcus felt miles away. Then, Reginald appeared on the terrace, his face grim. "Isabella," he said softly. "We have visitors." Isabella stood up, shifting Ethan to her hip. She walked through the French doors into the grand foyer, just as the sheriff and a process server stepped in. "Isabella Blackwood?" the server asked, thrusting a thick packet of papers toward her. "You are being served. Emergency custody hearing. Mr. Sterling alleges you are a flight risk and mentally unfit to care for the quadruplets. He is demanding immediate temporary custody." Isabella didn't flinch. She didn't drop the baby. She didn't scream. She looked at the papers, then at the sheriff. "My lawyers will be in touch," she said calmly. "Ma'am, the judge has ordered a hearing in Seattle in 48 hours, the sheriff said, tipping his hat apologetically. "You need to be there." As they left, Isabella handed the papers to Reginald. Her hand wasn't shaking anymore. The fear she had felt in the hospital was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating fury. "He wants to play the good father card," Isabella murmured. "He thinks because I was poor, I was unfit. He thinks he can rewrite history. He is desperate," Reginald noted. "A desperate man is dangerous." "No, Reginald," Isabella corrected, her eyes darkening. "A desperate man is sloppy. He just made the biggest mistake of his life. He invited me back to Seattle. He wants a show. I'll give him a blockbuster." Isabella walked to her office and picked up the secure phone. She dialed a number that belonged to the CEO of a media conglomerate she had acquired 3 weeks ago. "This is Isabella. I need a prime time slot." "Yes, an exclusive interview. The truth about the Sterling divorce. Air it the night before the hearing. And I want billboards, everywhere Marcus drives. Put my face on them. Put the babies' faces on them. The caption should read, 'He sold them for $10,000. Now he wants them back for free.'" The return to Seattle was not a retreat. It was an invasion. Isabella didn't stay in a hotel. She rented the entire top floor of the Four Seasons. She brought her own security team, former Mossad agents who looked like they ate concrete for breakfast. On the morning of the hearing, the courthouse steps were swarming with reporters. Marcus had tipped them off, hoping to sway public opinion. He stood near the entrance, wearing a humble navy sweater instead of his usual Italian suits, holding Tiffany's hand. He looked somber, the picture of a grieving father fighting for his lost children. "I just want my babies home," Marcus told a reporter from Channel 5, wiping a fake tear. "She took them. She hid them from me. I didn't even know where they were." "Liar!" a voice cut through the noise. A black limousine pulled up. The door opened, and Isabella stepped out. She wasn't wearing the red dress this time. She wore a white power suit, sharp and immaculate, looking like an avenging angel. The cameras swiveled to her. "Mr. Sterling claims he didn't know where we were," Isabella said, her voice projecting clearly without a microphone. "Yet I have the receipts from the $800 child support checks he sent to the Sunnyvale Arms. Checks that bounced twice, Marcus." The crowd gasped. Marcus's face turned blotchy red. "Isabella, please," Marcus shouted over the cameras. "Let's not do this in public. Think of the children." "I am thinking of them," she said, walking past him up the stairs. She didn't look at him. She looked through him. "That's why I'm going to make sure you never get within 50 feet of them again." Inside the courtroom, The air was thick with tension. Judge Hawthorne, a stern woman with a reputation for zero tolerance for theatrics, presided. Richard Vane, Marcus's lawyer, stood up and began his opening statement. He painted Isabella as a fraud, a woman who hid her wealth to entrap Marcus, a woman who dragged newborn babies across the country on a whim. "Your Honor," Vane boomed, "Mr. Sterling is a pillar of the community. He has a stable home. He has a fiancée, ready to step into the role of stepmother. These children deserve a father, not a globe-trotting heiress who treats them like accessories." Then it was Isabella's turn. Her lawyer, a woman named Catherine Pierce, who cost more per hour than Marcus made in a month, stood up. "We have no opening statement, Your Honor," Catherine said. "We simply have a video exhibit, Exhibit A." The large screen in the courtroom flickered to life. Marcus smiled smugly. He thought they would show photos of the apartment. He had an explanation for that. But it wasn't photos. It was security footage. Grainy, high-angle footage from a hospital room. The timestamp read, Deck 12, 10:42 a.m. The audio was crisp. 4, Isabella. 4. We discussed 1. But quadruplets. Do you know what that looks like? It looks like a circus. It looks like poverty. I'm done. I'm opting out. The courtroom went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. On the screen, Marcus threw the envelope on the bed. "Sign it. I'm not spending my prime years changing diapers for a litter." The video froze on Marcus's sneering face. In the real world, Marcus sank into his chair. He felt the eyes of everyone in the room, the bailiff, the clerk, even his own lawyer, burning into him. Litter. The word hung in the air like toxic smoke. Judge Hawthorne slowly took off her glasses. She looked at Marcus with an expression of pure disgust. "Mr. Sterling," the judge said, her voice dangerously quiet. "Did you refer to your children as a litter?" Marcus stammered. "Your Honor, I was under duress. It was a moment of panic. That video is taken out of context." "The context seems quite clear," Isabella said from her table. She stood up. "He didn't want them when they were a cost. He only wants them now because they come with a trust fund. This isn't a custody battle, Your Honor. It's a heist." The custody hearing was a massacre. Judge Hawthorne not only dismissed Marcus's petition, but also issued a temporary restraining order until a full psychological evaluation could be conducted on him. Marcus stormed out of the courthouse, shoving a cameraman aside. He needed a drink. He needed a plan. He retreated to the offices of Sterling Dynamics. He needed to liquidate some assets, get some cash to pay Vane to file an appeal. But when he swiped his keycard at the executive elevator, the light flashed red. Access denied. "What?" Marcus slammed the card against the reader. "Broken piece of junk." "It's not broken, Mr. Sterling." Marcus turned. Sitting in the lobby security chair was not the usual guard, old Mr. Henderson. It was a man in a black tactical suit with the Obsidian Holdings logo on his chest. "Who are you?" Marcus demanded. "Get out of my building." "It's not your building anymore, sir," the guard said calmly. The board convened an emergency meeting 20 minutes ago. Given the reputational damage from the video released in court, which is currently trending #1 on Twitter worldwide, by the way, they voted to remove you as CEO effective immediately. "They can't do that!" Marcus screamed. "I founded this company." "Clause 14B of your bylaws," the guard recited. "The moral turpitude clause. You're out, and since Obsidian Holdings owns the debt on the building, we are foreclosing on the physical assets to recoup losses. You have 1 hour to collect your personal effects. Escorted." Marcus stumbled out onto the rainy Seattle street. He had lost his children. He had lost his company. He had lost his reputation. He pulled out his phone to call Tiffany. She was his last lifeline. Her father had money. Maybe he could loan him enough to float for a few months. "Tiffany, pick up," he muttered. "Hello?" Her voice was icy. "Tiff, baby, listen. It's a disaster. The judge is biased. The board is corrupt. I need you to pack a bag. We're going to your dad's place in Aspen. I need to regroup." "We aren't going anywhere, Marcus," Tiffany said. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm at the Four Seasons, in the penthouse." Marcus froze. "Why are you at Isabella's hotel?" "Because," Tiffany said, and he could hear the smirk in her voice. "She made me an offer. Turns out she needs a brand ambassador for her new luxury cosmetics line. And she showed me your financials, Marcus. You're broke. You're actually negative broke. You've been putting my engagement ring on a credit card that's maxed out." "Tiffany, don't do this." "I'm a survivor, Marcus, just like you said you were. I matched your ambition, remember? My ambition tells me to side with the billionaire, not the loser who calls his kids a litter. Don't call me again. The ring is fake anyway. I had it tested." The line went dead. Marcus stood alone in the rain. He looked up at the giant digital billboard across the street. It showed a picture of Isabella, looking radiant, holding the 4 babies. The headline of the Seattle Times crawled underneath. "The heiress rises, how a single mum took down a tech tycoon." He had nothing, but a man with nothing has one thing left: rage. If he couldn't have the money, and he couldn't have the kids, he would make sure Isabella paid in blood. He knew something she didn't. He knew where the weak spot in the Blackwood security was. Years ago, when he was trying to woo investors, he had studied the security schematics of high-net-worth estates, including the Blackwood systems, hoping to sell them cybersecurity software. He remembered a flaw in the perimeter grid of the Hamptons estate, a service tunnel that led from the beach cliffs directly into the old wine cellar. He wasn't thinking rationally anymore. He was thinking like a wounded animal. He rented a cheap car with his last remaining cash and began the drive back to the airport. He wasn't going to court. He was going to the Hamptons. Meanwhile, at the Four Seasons, Isabella sat in the plush armchair, watching the rain streak the glass. Tiffany had just left, clutching a contract that gave her a minor modeling gig, a small price to pay to isolate Marcus completely. Reginald poured Isabella a glass of wine. "He is isolated, madam. The company is yours. The custody is secure. The fiancé has defected. You have won." Isabella didn't smile. She swirled the wine. "It feels too easy, Reginald. Marcus is a coward, but he's a narcissist. When a narcissist loses control, they don't just fold, they lash out." "We have security," Reginald assured her. "The Mossad team is with the children at the estate." "Call them," Isabella said, a sudden chill running down her spine. "Tell them to double the perimeter, specifically the cliffs. Marcus used to brag about how he could break into any system. He's coming." "You think he would try to physically harm them?" "I think he believes the world owes him," Isabella said, standing up. "And he's coming to collect. Get the jet ready. We're going back to New York tonight." The storm that hit the Hamptons that night was violent. Thunder shook the limestone walls of the Blackwood Manor. Down in the wine cellar, deep beneath the house, a grate rattled. It was rusted, forgotten by the new security upgrades, just as Marcus had remembered from the old blueprints he found online years ago. With a grunt of exertion, Marcus kicked the grate in. He was soaking wet, shivering, his eyes manic. He crawled into the cellar, smelling the dust and aged oak. He had a gun in his pocket, a small revolver he had bought off the street in Seattle before leaving. He didn't want to hurt the kids. He told himself that. He just wanted to take them. He would take them, disappear to a non-extradition country, and force Isabella to pay a ransom. $1 billion. Then she would respect him. He crept up the stone stairs, listening to the thunder masking his footsteps. He emerged into the kitchen. It was dark, illuminated only by lightning flashes. He moved toward the grand staircase. The nursery was on the second floor, east wing. He reached the landing. The door to the nursery was ajar. A soft nightlight glowed from within. Marcus pushed the door open, his gun trembling in his hand. "Daddy's here," he whispered crazily. "Daddy's here to save you from the bad woman." He stepped toward the cribs. "Hello, Marcus." The voice came from the rocking chair in the corner. The lights flipped on, blindingly bright. Marcus squinted, raising the gun. Sitting in the chair was not a nanny. It was Reginald, and he was holding a shotgun, leveled directly at Marcus's chest. Behind Marcus, the closet door burst open. 2 security operatives tackled him before he could even blink. The revolver skid across the floor. Marcus was pinned to the expensive carpet, his face pressed into the wool. Reginald stood up, looking down at him with the disappointment one might show a misbehaving dog. "Miss Blackwood anticipated you might try the service tunnel," Reginald said calmly. "She knows you better than you know yourself. She knows you are a man of patterns. And your pattern is failure." Isabella walked into the room. She was still wearing her travel clothes, having just landed and rushed from the helicopter pad. She looked at Marcus, pinned and pathetic on the floor of her children's room. She walked over and picked up the revolver. She emptied the bullets, letting them clatter onto the floor one by one. "You broke into my home," she said softly. "You threatened my children." "They're my children too," Marcus spat, struggling against the guards. "No," Isabella said, kneeling down so she was inches from his face. "They aren't, and I have the DNA test to prove it." Marcus froze. "What?" "The twist, Marcus," Isabella whispered. "The final twist. You were so worried about them being a litter, about them ruining your lineage. But did you ever wonder why they were quadruplets? Why they were so strong despite being premature?" She pulled a folded paper from her pocket. "We used a donor, remember? Because your count was too low. You signed the papers without reading them because you were too busy on a conference call. You authorized a sperm donor. You aren't their father, Marcus. Biologically, legally, or morally. You are a stranger." Marcus stared at her, his world shattering completely. The last shred of his ego, his biological legacy, was gone. "Get him out of my house," Isabella commanded, standing up. "The police are waiting at the gate." As they dragged him away, screaming into the stormy night, Isabella walked over to the cribs. Noah was awake, looking at her with wide, curious eyes. She picked him up, holding him close. "You're safe now," she whispered. "No more monsters." 5 years later, the headline of Forbes magazine featured a group photo that captivated the world. In the center sat Isabella Blackwood, looking more regal than any queen, wearing a sharp white suit. Surrounding her were 4 energetic, laughing 5-year-olds, Noah, Liam, Ethan, and Sophia. The caption read, "The $500 billion mum." Life at the Blackwood estate had settled into a beautiful, chaotic rhythm. Isabella had not only stabilized her grandfather's empire, she had expanded it. She had dissolved Sterling Dynamics entirely, erasing Marcus's name from the corporate world, and rebuilt it as Quadruplets, a company dedicated to medical technology for premature infants. Marcus Sterling was currently serving year 4 of a 15-year sentence at McNeil Island Correction Center for burglary, attempted kidnapping, and possession of an illegal firearm. He had no visitors, Tiffany had long since married a hedge fund manager in Miami. His mother, Evelyn, had tried to reach out to Isabella once, claiming she missed her grandchildren. But Reginald had intercepted the letter and burned it in the fireplace without Isabella ever seeing it. On a warm Sunday afternoon, Isabella sat on the terrace, watching the children chase a golden retriever across the lawn. Reginald, now semi-retired but still her most trusted advisor, poured her iced tea. "You look happy, Isabella," Reginald observed. "I am," she smiled, watching Sophia tackle her brother. "I used to think my life ended in that hospital room. I thought being left alone was a death sentence. And now? Now I know it was a liberation," she said. "If Marcus hadn't walked out, I never would have found my strength. I never would have become a Blackwood. He didn't break me, Reginald. He cleared the way for me to build something better." She looked down at her hand. She no longer wore a wedding ring. She didn't need one. She had the 4 loves of her life running on the grass, and an empire at her back. "Daddy didn't want a litter," she whispered to herself, the memory no longer stinging, but serving as a reminder of how far she had come. "But he forgot that wolves travel in packs, and we are doing just fine." What a roller coaster of emotions. Isabella's journey from a discarded, heartbroken mother in a hospital room to one of the most powerful women in the world is a true testament to the power of resilience. Marcus made the fatal mistake that so many arrogant people make. He underestimated the person he hurt. He thought he could throw Isabella away like trash, never realizing that he was tossing aside a diamond. The twist about the DNA test was the ultimate karmic justice. He lost his freedom, his fortune, and even his legacy in a single stormy night. It really makes you think about how we treat people when they are down. Marcus saw 4 babies as a burden, while Isabella saw them as her strength. Who do you think was the biggest villain here? Marcus for leaving, or his mother Evelyn for encouraging him? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of revenge, redemption, and billionaire justice, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share this video with a friend who loves a good drama, and make sure you are subscribed with the notification bell turned on so you never miss our next story. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.